So you're in the trees then, your nice little your man cave at the bottom of your garden.
Yeah.
I'm looking enviously at some of the guitars on your wall. What we got, this is, that's a Paul Reed Smith, I think.
Well, yeah, there's an interesting thing about that one. This is it's actually Lee Abraham that got me onto these. I mean, it looks like an expensive guitar. It looks like a Paul Reed Smith, but it's actually a Harley Benton, which is basically it's a copy of a Paul Reed Smith, but it's made by the company that do based in Germany called Thomann that do the sort of a lot of the gear, and they bought this brand or made this brand, and it's from a produced in a I think it's in Indonesia. So they do a lot of basically do all the guitars like trying to think of the other makes that they make in that same factory. So it's basically an exercise in badge engineering, if you like. Yeah. But what they've managed to do is produce an incredibly well-made guitar with quite so hardware, but the actual essence of the guitar, like the body and the neck, are absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, plays well.
And Lee got me onto Harley Benton as a brand, and he has an HSH Strat, which he uses almost like his sort of signature guitar. But I thought, I'm going to try one of these, a Paul Reed Smith sort of clone, and I absolutely love it, and it's brilliant. But I mean, I've done a few things to it, and I've swapped out the pickups for sort of higher output pickups. But it's a really great instrument, and I between this and the SG, those are the two guitars that I sort of gravitate to nearly always now.
Okay.
Certainly, this got loads of action on Rattrapant. I don't think I used the SG much on that. I did for a couple of the solos actually, but a lot of the parts were played on this. But it's just I've turned it into a bit of a not so much a high gain weapon, but it'll do quite a lot of the higher gain stuff if you want. But it's got quite a mellow tone. So it's got fair amount of gain in it.
Yeah.
And
what's your rig there, Robin? What are you running this through?
So this is really, I nearly always record guitars in the same way, and you probably can't see. I mean, I'll start with the guitar. So basically straight into my very basic pedal board. I don't know how much of that you can actually see. If you,
just in the corner there. What's on there? Yeah, that's
so basically we got just into a tuner, and then I've got a splitter, which is one of my Arm Audio splitters, and that just basically splits the signal into this amp, but also straight out into the DAW. And then I've got a Soul Food overdrive, and then from there straight into this Fender bass breaker amp. And it's a very low watt, 7 watt amp. And the clever bit is that from the amp, it's going into my active load box.
Now this is the Arm Audio. This is your Arm Audio.
The Arm Audio. So I mean, this is one I've been developing. It's a. I mean, I did sell this one, which I'll be able to show you. I actually sell this at the moment. This is the simple sort of resistive load box, and basically what that does, it just replaces the speaker on the amp, and then it enables you then to tap a signal off that straight into your DAW for recording. This prototype box there basically takes that a step further, and it's actually simulating the speaker characteristics of a guitar cam. So it gives you a bit more of a expressive tone. If you play them side by side, you can't really hear a lot of difference, but there is a reasonable amount of difference in the playing of it. You sort of hear a different sort of tone.
Right. Okay, so I suppose people using the box that you've been selling, they would use a cab simulator when they go.
That's right, and then from there it goes into the you can see the rack here. So it's going into my audio interface, and then on the screen there you might just be able to see I've got a copy of Guitar Rig. There's no amp simulation in that; it's just cab, so it's only a cab simulation. So what I've effectively got is like a hybrid setup. I've got a real valve amp, a real front end analog pedal board into the amp, and then basically the load box is taking the load off the amp and simulating the speaker, and then within the software it's then simulating the characteristic of the cabinet. So I can change all the cabinet characteristics, like turning it into a Vox sort of type sound, or a more modern 4x12 or a 2x12 or whatever. I can also change virtual microphone positions and all that sort of thing, and then add effects. So
have you got a go-to one for, like, if you're doing one of the solos on?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example. If I just go swap that over, I mean, it's.
Oh, he's going into the SG.
Into the SG.
Nice.
Sorry, Mikey. Turn the.
Is this an old favourite?
It is, yeah. I mean, this was used to get the sort of Sabbathy tone on a lot of the Mind Over Depth stuff. So you get that real sort of Sabbath. Well, that's just basically, there's no delay or anything else on that. That's just raw guitar tone straight into that. And all I'm doing there is just using a cab sim. And it just, you've got sort of fairly early sort of Sabbath sounding tones there, really.
Wow.
And a lot of that, I was using the same method, right the way back to early Heyman Dreams. And if you sort of back the volume off and the gain, you can get some really nice, sort of more mellow tones. So sort of more
without annoying the neighbours.
And you can get it virtually silent. I mean, I'm playing it through my studio monitors, but if I mute those, all you can hear is basically the mechanical noise of the valve. So if I play, you'll hear obviously the strings, but there's a little bit of noise that comes out of the amp itself. But you could be sort of playing screaming solos and virtual silence, but still using valves that are glowing like mad in the back of your amp. So that's the beauty of it. You just get all the valve tone, and none of the drawbacks, like the incredible volume and the antisocialness of it.
You mentioned the arm splitter as well. Is that another product of yours? Yeah,
that's just something else I've that sort of came out of necessity, really. I mean, I can show you what it is.
Sorry to make you dismantle your.
Well, it's really easy. I mean, basically, it looks like that.
Yeah.
So it's just a simple sort of small form pedal, but the clever thing is it just has a single input from the guitar this end, and then you can split it two ways, and it's got a buffer that's in there as well. So basically, it preserves the integrity of your guitar signal. You've got sort of a high impedance guitar signal, and then it will boost that up, basically make that stronger for going through a pedal board, so you don't get sort of the tone suck that you would normally get if you're going through lots of different pedals.
How do you know how to make these things? Because I'm you're an engineer in a water.
I was, yeah. I mean, I my background. I was very interested in electronics when I was about 15 years old, and I studied O-level electronics and I did A-level electronics, and I was doing lots of projects and things, got interested in making electronic things from way back, and it's something that just got put by the wayside and forgot about. But then getting into music, you're getting into gear and you realise, oh, hold on a minute, I've got some experience here, and it all starts to sort of coalesce together as a thing. You find yourself wanting to build things or modify things. I mean, one of the other things I built was studio owners will know all about the final mix stage. You go through something called bus compression, where you have this sort of magical process where you glue the mix together, where you put a tiny bit of compression on your mix, and that device there in the rack, the white one, it's basically a clone that I made of an SSL 4000 bus compressor. So it's the famous SSL desk that's used on countless 80s records, and through the 90s. So I made a clone of that. So that's been used on most of my recent stuff. Retropomp was used on as the final stage sort of bus compressor. Yeah.
Is that going to be commercially available?
That won't be. No, that was very much a one-off, really, just for me. I mean, there are other things I'm looking at as well. But the trouble is, it's just so much time again, and it's just trying to clone yourself to do all these all these different avenues. I'd love to just spend the whole time just going through the electronics route, and then, or another, clone maybe just doing the record label route. So it's trying to find time to do all these things. Yeah.
Coming back to the instrumentation, you played us a couple of nice licks there in E minor, I think. I don't know, but
I can't remember.
Did you teach yourself to play? I
did, yeah. And I've not been really taught guitar really at all. I mean, I can't do tab. I've never been able to get on with tab. I can't read music. So everything I've learned on a guitar has been through working with other people, just sitting there and seeing how they do things. But also
friends of yours from
school, watching instructional videos, that sort of thing, or just, in recent times. I mean, I still watch a lot of videos even now, watch a lot of YouTube videos and get tips on certain things. I mean, I'm a terrible kleptomaniac of technique, of stealing bits of technique from, I mean, it's like every guitarist. I started off, pentatonic. Everybody learns the pentatonic, and you sort of sat there, you're sort of working that out, and that's great for a while, and then but you think, oh, that's a bit limiting. And
who taught you that? Who taught you your first pentatonic scale?
I can't even remember.
Okay,
it must have come by ear. I can't think of any other way, because I mean, if anything, I've always managed to listen to a piece of music and I can pick out the notes and play them somewhere. And I've been able to do that with piano as well and keyboards. So I guess I must have just done the same thing on a guitar. So I can't think I'd have had the resources. I mean, YouTube wasn't a thing then, on the internet. So it must have been just from ear. And then I guess from there, I realised that, hold on a minute, I can, and also from working with the piano, there's notes in between I'm missing out. Why don't I just put those, those notes in between? So I'm going from, now I'm going, oh, hold on a minute. Now I've got some minor, I've got a minor scale forming, and it sort of came from that. So I'm mixing up my majors and minors there, but and then from there, I had a bit of an epiphany moment when I got into Yngwie Malmsteen, of all people. You think, well, he's famous for his shredding, but he had this incredible technique where he do this incredibly blistering fast run. But one of the reasons it's so fast is because he does this thing where he repeats two of the notes that he's already played. So he's going, so it goes up and up, and that's clever. I can sort of copy that, and I could get faster and faster because I'm not having to sort of go all over the fretboard. I'm largely sort of repeating fingers on strings. So it was those sort of things I'm sort of stolen off people, lots of different people from all guitarists. So, and eventually you can obviously build your speed a bit faster and and sort of go a bit more into the gymnastics, but.
Is there a recent technique that you've been leaning on quite heavily on Rashomon? Anything that you've been like?
Maybe on the. I guess on the, like you said at the beginning, the beginning of in 1985, because I'd got this Harley Benton and I was loving the tremolo arm. I think that's probably where the sort of Jeff Beck thing came from.
Yeah.
So can't get it to do it. It's not floating properly, but sort of the banging of the bridge and just sort of getting that sort of classic Jeff Beck sort of. And it's more morphed into Gilmore, but you get the idea. It's having fun, sort of playing around a little bit with the. That's a bit more like it.
That's it. Yeah.
I mean, that's a classic Gilmour. I've used that several times. Sort of digging in with the pick and sort of picking up, the sort of pinch harmonics on there.
Yeah. I was trying to explain. I write for Total Guitar magazine as well, and I was trying to explain how to do a pinch harmonic, and it's a lot harder to explain than it is to do.
It's incredibly difficult to explain. It's like, it's just something that comes, isn't it? I mean, I'm not very good at them, I admit, but I can usually find them if I dig in the right places. It helps with a guitar that's sort of very sensitive to that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got a lot of range, this guitar, and I again, you can even get to the sort of Van Halen sort of levels of pinch harmonics if you were good enough to do it. I mean, it's it's that sort of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It's
Hey, that might be a copyright takedown for this video.
I don't think I played it well enough for that.
It sounds, that sounds pretty good. And I suppose because you've got the tremolo on there, it must be tempting just to put that. If that's a new toy, you just want to put it through.
And it's sort of think, it's there, I should use it. But a lot of them, stuff like the beginning of in 1985, and I've done it on a few other things as well. It's the classic sort of Gilmour-ish type noodle at the beginning of sort of atmospheric pieces, sort of.
Oh, lovely.
It's a bit more Beck-like, I think. That's sort of. Yeah, so that sort of thing, really.
What about acoustics? Do you have as much acoustic on Ratchet Plant or not?
Yeah, trying to think. Oh, crikey! Now you've got me thinking. There must be. Yeah, I think Memories Lie has it, and I think I Stick to You. Some acoustic on there. Probably less so than maybe some of the other. I mean, it was interesting. I realised the other day, and I find myself with a lot of guitarists. They have sort of familiar tropes that they sort of fall back into, don't they? And favourite chords. And
that's your lovely technique.
Oh, it is in tune. I'm probably giving too much away here, actually, but I keep, when I'm writing songs, I keep coming back to very similar chord sequences, and if I play this, Cosmograf fans will probably instantly recognise it. But so those four chords, I think I've used, or in that sequence, I must have used in about 4 or 5 different songs, all in different ways. So there's lots of variation there, but I think it's the open strings of the acoustic. So you've got. I'm only actually fretting three strings. So that's been maybe a chord sequence. A lot of bands will have their favourite chord sequences, and that makes them sound the way they do. And I think that's probably, if anything, that's a Cosmograf chord sequence.
Yeah, like. Very much. So we've got a G sharp minor.
So it's like a G minor, and then it's a G major, or it's sort of an open. So a G major would be like that.
Minor, isn't it?
Sorry, G sharp minor. Yeah, that's right.
Into the G. Yeah.
So G sharp major, and that would be a G, straight G, but it's a sort of. What does that make that with? So it's almost like a suspended G without the on a piano, but and then it's a similar thing on a C.
Seventh.
So that would be a straight C, and then it's a, and then a sharp, yeah.
And when you're playing that, Robin, are you're going on ear? You're not thinking
just on ear, yeah. I'm really not thinking about the theory of it at all. And a lot of songs I'm sort of putting together, just say literally messing around with chords. I mean, just finding things that sound strange. Like that was something I discovered. I couldn't really understand why I was. Not make it work on here, but that was from a song called that was on Unreasonable Silence, which the title completely escapes me now. But I don't even know what chord it is, but it's sort of in E. But I'm actually playing on the second string. I'm playing the first finger below the 12th position. So it's this. So I don't know what chord that is, but it sounds all right, so I'm going to use it. And you're building things on that sort of way.
A lot of it's by ear, basically.
Yeah, and it's all ear, and and even with the more sort of classically styled stuff. So I mean, when Age's Done Its Duty, had a lot of classical type playing. I mean, I'd never professed to be anything like a sort of classical guitarist or anything, but so the more the so that sort of stuff, that was the intro to one of the sections on When Age's Done Its Duty. So
lovely.
Very simple stuff, it's just like an A minor thing. So I'm just changing the A string and then to the D string. So I'm making use of the natural tuning of the guitar, really. So I've always tried to maybe steal things that I could get away with, because I'm not the greatest player. So I'm just trying to sort of steal things that sound good, really, that make almost sound better than they should do. So that's a lot of things I've done like that, really, over the years. Yeah.
Do you consider yourself a guitarist first and a keyboardist second? Do you?
Difficult one, that really. I suppose these days probably slightly more a guitarist, but it's always pretty well run hand in hand.
Right.
I started learning both at similar age. I don't really have a preference which one I go to first for songwriting. I mean, I've written things first on piano and then obviously first on guitar as well. So it's whichever strikes me as an influence, to start with, really.
Yeah, of course. And in terms, do you play on a MIDI keyboard into plugins, or what do you?
Yeah, I mean, I've got this. This is quite a recent addition, actually. With I've got various keyboards and synthesizers. I mean, there's like an Access Virus synthesizer over the back there, but I've got this set up now where I can actually use this very big 88-note keyboard to straight into the door, and it's brilliant for scoring strings and just generally sort of getting ideas down really, really quickly. So
could you talk me through your preferred plugins for piano and maybe church organ and stuff?
Yeah, I mean that's certainly a go-to. I mean, that Mini Grand is just the standard piano in Pro Tools. They give it away free with Pro Tools. I don't think there's a record I've ever done that doesn't have Mini Grand in it somewhere. It's just a classic. It's just a great sounding piano. It's has a multitude of uses. Let's change that out. It takes a little while just to fire something else in. Let's just so we can get.
So you're a Logic guy?
This is Pro Tools.
Oh, okay, but
yeah.
What, you use that for a DAW, or do you?
Yes, yeah.
So it's all straight into Pro Tools.
Straight into Pro Tools, yeah. So virtually, I mean, I've been using Pro Tools since since when Age has done its duty. That was the first record I swapped into it.
Okay.
I got rid of Cubase just after having the horrible experience with End of Ecclesia. I ditched it and said, right, let's get a professional setup. And I started with Pro Tools on the PC, and it was still having problems. I just ditched the PC and said, right, we're going Mac. And that was it. From then, it was just a complete breeze from then on. And I've had issues, but nothing like the early days. So it's been absolutely.
So how's Pro Tools for just as Cubase users and Logic users? Would they be able to switch to Pro Tools relatively straightforwardly, or
the principles are fairly similar? These things are very much tools, and most of the things are set up in a very similar way. So if you're a great, let's put it this way, if you're a great producer and mixer within Pro Tools, you're going to be a great producer and mixer within Logic, and vice versa. That's not going to hold you back. Where these things have their differences is very much within the editing tool. So Pro Tools is particularly good at very, very fast editing of audio. And there are people that are much, much quicker than me that can manipulate audio really, really quickly, cut things and put bass parts in time, move little tiny waveforms around. And those sort of tools are second to none within Pro Tools. But other users say that Logic's better for the more sort of MIDI implementation, with putting in keyboards into it and having control over those sort of MIDI parts. So it's very much you have to pick the tool that you think is going to suit you best. But there's I don't think these days there's any deal breakers in any of the major, platforms. And there are other people that are using some of the really cheap ones like Reaper and stuff like that, and just producing whole albums in there as well that are incredible. So getting a professional product is not these days anything to do with software. It's the use. It's they all sound and they all produce an incredible final product. It's about the what you think is best. What you work best with.
Yeah. Okay. When I dabble in acoustic orchestral stuff, I've got Cubase. I'm still struggling on with Cubase, and I use the Spitfire's BBC Symphony Orchestra.
Yeah, Spitfire stuff is really great. I've got some here actually. Let's have a look at that. That's the only thing I find with Spitfire is it's quite
resource heavy.
It's a little bit of that, but it's also it doesn't come out of the box, doesn't play very well out of the box. Some sample sets play, you sit there with a keyboard and wow, this sounds incredible. You just play them like a normal keyboard and they just come out of the box. The presets sound fantastic. Spitfire needs a bit more of an investment of time to get it all dialed in, and it sounds better within a mix than it does, that's a violin set now. So again, it comes straight out the gates in a monophonic setup, which isn't very inspiring to start with. So you've got to change to something like that. See, that to me, that's the sort of one of the first samples you pick up, and it's sounding quite melotronic. It's not very natural. You can get very natural sounds out of it, but you have to delve deeper into the ecosystem and pull all that sort of stuff out. So, whereas some sample sets, they sound just brilliant straight out the box,
Yeah. So in terms of sample sets, which what do you like for strings, for example? What's
the strings I use this one, Spitfire Studio strings for the which is fantastic. The other one I really, really like is from 8Dio called, it's a bit of a mouthful. It's called Agitato Grandio Sordino Strings. But that just sounds incredible. I'll give you might be able to give that a bit of a flavour. A bit loud. So in a mix with, properly set up, they sound really incredible. But I also use just the standard contact stuff as well, and I've used that for years, both choirs and strings, and that sounds really good. Just the standard sort of sample sets in Contact 5.
Do you have a go-to reverb, Robin?
A go-to reverb, I do, yeah. I'll throw that up on this, actually. One I use a lot is one called Valhalla Room, which has a great not only does it sound great, it's really cheap as well, which is fantastic. It's only 50 quid for the whole thing, which is, for a plug-in sort of money, is actually really good. But
is that the one where you can model the room?
It's not. It's really simple. It's basically a. I think it's an algorithmic reverb rather than a. What's the other one? The other one was where they model a room. It's quite very low overhead, which is great when you're working in a big mix because you could have lots of instances of it. It doesn't cause you a problem, with CPU, because you can sort of set up a different reverb for your guitars and another reverb for the overall mix, another reverb for vocals, and I can end up easily with 10 different instances of Valhalla Room across a mix, and it doesn't cause me any problems. But I also use Deverb, which is the standard plug-in on Pro Tools, and that has some great presets for drums. So it got a really good plate in there. It's got a fantastic church reverb, which has this sort of modulating feature where it almost sounds like the instrument's out of tune, which I've used. It gives it sort of a really unnerving, creepy sound, which I've used on quite a few.
Where on the new album would we hear that?
Oh crikey! Let me see. It'll be on the vocals on Memories Lie. On the backing vocals, yes. I've created the sort of a number of the vocals going into this sort of churchy, sort of ambient sort of sound.
I quite like that little modulation thing that happens with some reverbs.
It's really weird. It's like I've lost the keyboard now, I've had this problem before. Oh, hold on, no, not me.
Oh, it's our first outtake.
Me and MIDI interfaces. I had a spectacular incident with this keyboard.
Is this the one?
You probably saw about it on Facebook. I don't know what I was doing, but I managed to pick up the wrong adapter for one of these keyboards, the power adapter, and I plugged it in, and I thought, what's that smell? There's a funny smell in here. And I looked at the dongle coming out of the USB interface, and it was literally melting. And it turned the dongle into just a mess of plastic. And what I'd done is I'd managed to pick up a power supply with the wrong polarity, so it had a center negative instead of a center positive. Put it through this keyboard, and it took out this keyboard, completely destroyed the motherboard, the printed circuit board, and the processing board. It took out that one over there, which was also plugged into the USB interface. It took out the dongle, and it killed the USB interface itself. Thankfully, it didn't kill my audio interface, because that would have been really a nightmare. But that cost me. Well, in the end, I managed to get it resolved quite well. But it took a long time.
Quite good, weren't they? The manufacturer's quite good. Yeah,
one was and one wasn't. Nectar were fantastic. They gave me a board for free, which was absolutely incredible. Just couldn't believe it. Really. I just said, guys, I'm just hoping that you've got a spare. Process a main board for this keyboard, because I've melted mine. And they said, yeah, no problem, just give me your address, I'll send you one. I thought, what? Just unbelievable. Studio Logic, the other keyboard, with a complete and utter opposite, had an absolute nightmare with them. And I had to pay 110 quid for this tiny little board, and it took almost 6 months, I think, to come from Italy. And it was just a miserable experience from start to finish. But yeah,
what brand to keep?
This is Nectar. It's it is Nectar Technologies to make the keyboard, and the actual keyboard is called a Nectar Impact. This is actually brilliant, absolutely brilliant. This is the very keyboard that Andy Paul and I myself used on all of the big train shows. So it's got some history.
We haven't even talked about just as you know, I'm writing a book about BBT, and just hearing the hoops that you had to go through, because when you played live with them, you and Andy were working really hard to ensure that the live sound was going to be similar, if not identical, to the record.
Yeah, that was a very big component of it, really. It was there was certainly an expectation there that we wanted to, or a desire as well, to make the live sound as authentic to the record as it could be. I mean, if I'm being honest, it's not something I particularly agree with, having gone through all that process now and thinking I'm not sure that was the best approach, but it was just something that we did. It was a way that we decided on early doors. I think it was achieved. I mean, we got down to the level where I was learning parts from Pro Tools that Danny had very kindly sort of put similar stems to this together that had come directly from the album, even down to the level that he'd written and produced sort of cheat sheets for the precise settings for every single plugin that was used on the record. And we were sort of trying to replicate that level of complexity live. It was absolutely mind-blowing. I mean, I was using MainStage to sort of configure all the plugins, and we must have had 30 to 40 plugins going. The keyboards I was using 2 times 88 keyboards. One was this one, the other one was the Studio Logic over there. The keyboard on certain songs was split into about 5 different zones. So I'd play like a cello down here somewhere, a piano here. So as well as sort of trying to learn every single individual part, I was trying to learn. I also had to be mindful of where on the keyboard I was allowed to play without straying into the wrong octave. If you hit the wrong octave on the keyboard, you end up playing a completely wrong instrument, which happened. And you had sort of patch change as well in the same song. So you were playing, and then literally on the next bar, you'd have to hit the button to go to the next configuration. It was a massive technical undertaking, yeah.
And of course, it only dawns on me now that your last live gig before you played, I think you played the Anvil and Basic Stoke with them. That was your first gig with them, just before the Grand Tour.
That's right.
And Lorelei, of course, Night of the Prog, that you played with them as well, in front of 4,000 people. The Islington Academy thing, that was the Islington Assembly Halls, that was the last gig you played before the Anvil, is that right?
Yes, it was. Yeah, so I'd gone from the previous, 2014, the Cosmograf gig, and then it was 2019, I guess, or no, 2018. So 4 years, I'd never played a gig.
And then to go from nothing to 5,
from there to Basingstoke, and then to Lorelei, and then I was looking out at probably I can't remember the audience was absolutely massive. I can't remember the number.
It was about 4,500, something like that.
4,500, yeah. It was terrifying, absolutely terrifying. I don't know how I got through it really, but it just happened. I mean, one of the things that I think really, really helped me was we were all using in-ears, and there was a great sense of isolation that you could shut yourself out from the crowd, even though you could see everybody looking at you. Dave Gregory, he doesn't. He wouldn't use them. No, he's very, very much a monitor guy, and so he was always had his monitor going on the floor. So there was that sense of isolation. But again, the whole in-ear experience was a whole nother chapter of. I'll have to put it into my book one day when I do the memoirs. But I had enormous problems getting to grips with in-ear monitors and the whole concept of someone else trying to dial in your mix as a monitor engineer. I found that extremely frustrating and difficult, and it's something I vowed never to do again. If I'm ever going on stage again, I'll be doing my own in-ear monitor mixes. Much as nothing taking away nothing from those guys that do that. They were brilliant, absolutely brilliant, but. I realised quite early on that this is not how I want to work on a live stage. I need to be in charge of my own monitoring.
And of course, the good thing that dawns on me now is you'll have the Empire Blu-ray, the Hackney Empire gig that you did. You're on it, so you've got that lovely sort of souvenir of that time, I suppose.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, having said that, I haven't even to this day watched it, and I'm not sure. It's a difficult one for me, that one. It was quite a stressful time, and it was. I think I'd find it quite uncomfortable to watch. I've seen little clips of it, and people tell me it's fantastic, and I did a really good job and everything else. But I think I don't know. I don't know what it is about that, but I just find it quite difficult to think about watching it. And there's a lot of nostalgia, a lot of issues with. Excitement of the time, and there was a lot of pressure. And I think it's something I'll come back to in another few years and enjoy. It's just a bit too soon at the moment, if that makes any sense at all. I don't know what it is, but you know, it's. I didn't have a burning. I mean, I was really pleased to get it, and I'm really proud of it. But I didn't want to watch it, if that makes any sense. I wasn't running to the Blu-ray player to put it on. But I've seen certain parts of it, but I'll come back to it.
You're going to let it, like you're going to put it away for a bit and come back to it.
and then come back, and I can sort of see it in its context.
Well, from my perspective, I think you'll be happy. You know, I can't, whatever was going on in your mind at the time, I can only imagine the sort of pressure you're under to.
There was a lot of pressure. There was, I think there was a lot of. I'd already made, by the time I was doing the Hackney show, I'd already made the decision to leave. And I was quite sad about that. And I was quite upset at the end of that gig as well. I did admit to right at the end, I sort of came off stage and I just very emotional. I couldn't really deal with the whole thing. So there was a lot of sort of emotions about leaving what I thought I'd spent a lot of time doing as well. But so it was a bit of a roller coaster of emotions, the whole thing really towards the end. It was a difficult one. Just
to put myself in your shoes there, you're sort of, this as important as your contribution was to that tour, at the end of the day, it's somebody else's tour, I suppose. It's there, and you're having those sort of experiences, but on somebody else's dime, I guess. Is that?
Yeah, I've spoke about this before, and it's really good to sort of talk about that, really, because much as I loved being with the guys, and they were genuinely lovely people, and I really did genuinely love the music, it's exactly what you said. It became really difficult and conflicting when I was spending really all that time working on somebody else's music, and I'm thinking, well, hold on a minute, why aren't I doing this with my own music? I just couldn't get that out of my head. And some of the guys that are in the band have also got their own other outlets, and they're doing their own music too, and they successfully managed to mix the two, but I just couldn't do that. I found that I really, really struggled to do anything else. It was just taking so much time. So overridingly, that was the reason, that I had to give it up, because it was just, I needed that creative input
for your own.
For me, and I needed to be feeling like I was making a creative contribution, and that there wasn't that opportunity there. Quite rightly, it wasn't my band. I didn't have any right to do that.
You were a touring musician for the band.
I was a touring musician, and I just realised that I would never be truly happy in that environment. Some people would be more than happy with that going forward, but I needed the creative input either on some level, and I think that's what was missing.
I think in a few years' time, you'll come to see both sides of that. I think I imagine you'll be able to balance the good with the
and in an ideal world, I'd have loved to have done both, because just being with those people and just having all that excitement going on was fantastic. It was really. I
remember I saw them in Newport on that tour, the grand tour at Newport, and I said hello to you, and it was just a nice vibe. The big train passengers, they're a community unto themselves, aren't they?
They are. They're a bunch of incredible people.
Did they embrace you, and did they?
Very much so. Yeah, there was no issues with that at all. I was always slightly worried taking over. I mean, I was taking over Andy's position, really, behind the keyboards, and that was a difficult one because Andy had written and produced a lot of the music too. So it was a sensitive area, but I never really had any sense of. You're the new guy, so you're any of that sort of traditional thing you get with bands where the new person on stage gets criticised, and which a lot of people have gone through. Even people like Craig Blundell and people like that have said, drumming for Steve Wilson after you following someone else is a nightmare. So I never got any of that. No, it was fine. Yeah,
slightly different situation, I suppose, because Andy leaving anyway, wasn't he? I think.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, there was that. It wasn't so much that it was a a situation where he'd been sacked and I was brought in to replace him. It was very much he'd made his own decision to part ways anyway. So I was really sort of filling that role. Yeah.
Okay, mate. Well, like I say, in a few years' time, you're going to put Empire on and go, wow, I did.
Yeah, I mean,
look at all my octaves. Look at all my different instruments on my keyboard.
But I learned so much from that, and one of the things I learned was I think as much as anything is the live experience. Doesn't have to be a verbatim copy of the album, and it probably is better if it's not, because it's all about the energy with live, and I think it's all about the audience react to you. I think, and if you're comfortable and feeling it and doing it, that you're going to get a much bigger audience reaction than if you're sat there absolutely petrified out your mind, wondering whether you're going to hit the next wrong note, and you're not relaxed in that situation. So I think I sort of learned that I wanted to go in a slightly different direction with my own stuff, with live.
I was going to say, and now you're fronting the band, you're the guitar guy, you're not going to worry too much about the keys, so that's your
so for example, on a practical level, I'm certainly not going to be exhaustively making sure that every sound sounds like the album, because we can't cover all those bases anyway. You'd need about 8 people on stage to do that. So I can't do that. We can't afford to put that sort of show together. So it's going to be, we're making use of the technology. We've got backing tracks to do some of the, the simpler parts and the donkey work atmospheres and stuff. But any of the sort of live parts, they're going to be my interpretation of what I want to put across as the live show, not so much what's on the record. And of course, we've got Lee in the band as well, and Lee hasn't really played on much of the Cosmograf stuff at all. So Lee will have his own ideas how to present that live, and I don't want to dictate to him how it must be played. I think I want to, put his own energy into it as well.
I wonder if this particular, for example, sorry to go on, but I wonder if this particular guitar solos that, because there's nothing worse when you go to see a band and they don't quite play there's some particular parts that they have to play. Like
they have to play. There are certain parts. I mean, a classic example is like Dave Kilminster, isn't it? Going on and playing with Roger on the wall with the parts on the Floyd stuff. There are certain parts he has to do because it won't, and certain lyrical phrases that have to be there, because otherwise it's not right. But inevitably, you've got to give the guy, he's an incredible guitarist in his own right. He's an expressive. Every guitarist has their own individual voice, and you can't deny that. You can't deny that to people. So, and again, with Stephen Wilson with Guthrie Govan, and there are certain parts that Guthrie will play on Routine or Regret Number 9 or whatever. There's no other guitarist on the planet will ever get anywhere near. So, they've got to have their own freedom to express the way they would play it, or within their limits as well.
Well, I'm excited for you. I'm excited to hear. I think that the live thing is. I think that's where it needs to happen, isn't it? And like you.
I think so. To go further. I mean, I'm just conscious that I've done 8 albums now, and I'm just getting to. It's starting to feel a little bit repetitive. That I need to do something different to step it up, and to me, doing some shows is part of that. Really, I need. It's not a more sense of keep churning out albums. I'm not really making the most of what I've actually produced already. There's not enough people that are into them. So I'd rather step back a little bit now, consolidate what I've got and present those as shows and try and get more people interested in the music I've already done.
Right.
Rather than keep successively, throwing out album after album. I mean, there will be another Cosmograf album next year, but I think after that, things will slow down quite a lot in terms of Cosmograf output, but I'm going to get into other projects. So that's personally where I see things going now.
Other projects?
Yeah, literally other musical projects. So I've always wanted an electronic album, and I'm really keen on getting that done, which won't be under the Cosmograf name. It'll be a completely separate thing, and hopefully other people involved in it as well. So that sort of thing, just want to try other things. But I'm certainly not saying that I'm ditching Cosmograf or anything like that. But it won't come out at the same rate that it has been, because there's no sense in just keep churning out albums year after year if the audience isn't there to listen to it. So I'd rather get more people interested in what I've done already, and I think doing shows is a way to do that, really.
Yeah, cool. Well, I wish you well with it, and thanks for doing this, Robin. It's been
not a problem.
Thank you.